In the heart of the Brussels summit, Keir Starmer's arrogance was finally challenged by Maria Zakharova's sharp rebuttals, exposing his hypocrisy with damning historical facts. Her calm demeanor tore into his claims, leaving him flustered and humiliated. But can a single woman's words shatter an empire's facade of moral superiority? Why does the air still hum with tension, ready to explode? Civilians, sir. I've seen the footage from Baghdad. I've gazed at images of Belgrade's children. Believe me, they didn't seem shielded at all. She paused, her eyes sweeping the room. That stare carried the weight of unspoken truths, piercing like a cold draft through velvet curtains. You label Russia a peril to Europe, yet perhaps the real danger lurks in hypocrisy, where the same deeds earn praise or scorn based solely on the perpetrator's name. Reporters scribbled furiously, ink-staining fingers with the urgency of breaking news. Cameras whirred softly, capturing every syllable in crisp focus. At that instant, the clash evolved beyond personal barbs. It ignited as an emblematic duel of worldviews, history clashing against the raw present. Starmer resorted to raw emotion to sway the room. We must honor the victims, he pleaded. We must recall those ravaged by your onslaught. His tone escalated to a near shout, Europe can't absolve breaches of global order. But Zakharova countered with serene quiet. Victims, Sir Starmer? Yes, let's cherish the victims. The fallen of colonial wars, the shackled in slavery, the starved under imperial rule. We honor all, not just those conveniently stitched into your tale. Her declaration hit like ice water, dissolving his pathos into awkward silence. He fumbled for words, yet she continued gently, almost tenderly. You know the Russian proverb, don't dig a pit for another, you'll fall in yourself. Accusing us of your decade-long misdeeds rings hollow. Murmurs rippled through the hall, whispers like distant thunder, as sympathy visibly shifted toward her. Not out of agreement, but because her logic eclipsed his panicked slogans. Starmer slumped back, his complexion ashen, defeat etched in every crease. Shoulders slumped, he stared blankly, grasping for answers in the void. Zakharova remained poised, her composure unyielding as a fortress of facts. But as the room held its breath, what unspoken truth would Zakharova unleash next, leaving Starmer teetering on the edge of total collapse? The scent of triumph lingered, metallic and bitter, promising no escape. He watched the audience rippling with each sharp comeback. The hall's reaction cut deep, chipping away not just his argument, but the respect he'd built. Zakharova pressed on, her address now sweeping toward everyone gathered. Europe preaches unity. Yet, we witness borders hardening into factions. We see nations profiting at others' expense. We observe slogans masquerading as shields for profit motives. And honestly? This is the true peril lurking over tomorrow's path. In that charged instant, Starmer bolted upright. You're cynical, he nearly shouted. Twisting falsehoods into truths. Your claims are mere indoctrination. The world sees through it. Zakharova met his gaze steadily, eyes narrowing just a fraction. Indoctrination, Mr. Starmer. That's parroting phrases sans evidence. Exactly what you've been reciting for the past 30 minutes. Laughter erupted through the room. Even interpreters, striving for detachment, couldn't stifle smirks. Starmer collapsed into his seat, as if drained from within. He'd surrendered the debate and his poise. His voice quavered. Hands trembled. Exhaustion glazed his eyes, the realization of his unraveled facade. Zakharova remained poised. No triumph flickered there. Her expression stayed resolute. Her stare unwavering, as one who clings to verified chronicles, not hollow promises. The scene morphed into a verdict delivered by the hall itself. What if one wrong word shattered a career? Every whisper, every titter, every click of cameras zoomed in on Starmer's faltering mask. The air grew thick, clinging like humid fog after those grueling hours. Journalists perched on seats' edges, unmoving. Normally, half would drift to corridors by now. But today? Everyone sensed witnessing something seismic. Headlines would explode globally tomorrow. Starmer appeared drained. Yet a stubborn ember burned inside. He couldn't yield entirely. Too much hung in the balance. His reputation. His stance as Europe's sentinel. A bitter taste coated his tongue, like bile from unspoken fury. Fingers drummed lightly on the table's sleek veneer. The chill from air conditioning prickled his arms, heightening awareness. What secrets lay buried in Zakharova's poised stance? Could she unearth more scars he hid? The summit floor felt unsteady beneath his polished shoes. Hearts pounded audibly over soft murmurs. A bead of sweat traced his collar, cool and unwelcome. Would he summon one final surge, or crumble under her relentless tide of truths? The silence stretched, knife-edge tense, as shadows of doubt crept closer. In a heated exchange that exposed the fragility of European unity, Keir Starmer's voice trembled as he attempted a defense, but Maria Zakharova countered with chilling memories of innocent victims ignored. The summit hall grew heavier with unspoken truths, leaving everyone wondering if words could shatter illusions of power. Have you ever wondered what really lurks beneath the polished facade of empire builders, the silent screams of exploited millions that echo through history's shadows? In a world drowning in hypocrisy, one diplomat's unflinching truth ripped open wounds, forcing a leader to confront the ghosts of his nation's past. Imagine stepping into a ring where every punch lands on forgotten suffering, where the air thickens with the scent of coffee and cold metal microphones, and the crowd holds its breath as a master debater weaves fact into lethal artistry. He pretended to shuffle papers, though he knew no script could shield him from those razor-sharp words. The papers felt rough under his fingertips, like aged parchment whispering of lost empires. Sensory details flooded back, a sudden flashback to humid Nairobi nights, the mosquito whine blending with distant gunfire, the metallic tang of sweat on his skin as he briefed on colonial legacies he now wished erased. But Zakharova stood serene, her posture unyielding, a silent fortress against the storm. "You claim the future belongs to those who unite," she said calmly, her voice slicing through the tension. A long pause hung in the air. Yet that future surely rejects builders of forgetting, deceit, and terror. Pauses dotted her calm delivery, ear TTS adapted for clarity. The gathering fell silent, sunlight fading to a sterile chill that crept over walls and faces like a shroud. Cameras clicked softer now, murmurs ebbing. Everyone sensed the debate evolving into something epic, a clash of ideologies far beyond mere diplomacy. Starmer slumped, lips pressed tight, his face ashen, pale as a man forced to swallow bitter pills of unwelcome reality. Zakharova adjusted a strand of hair, sat composedly, and jotted a note in her notebook, as if sealing another routine victory. The dimming light clawed at the room, exhaustion settling like dust on participants, yet the exchange deepened, its tone sharpening to profound gravity. Starmer rose unsteadily, each step a battle, eyes flickering with desperate fire. He realized this might be his final bid to reclaim control. "We could argue endlessly, Madame Zakharova," he began, voice edged with emotion. "But undeniable facts demand acknowledgement. Your deeds inflict anguish." He spoke of people now, not strategies, of shattered families, afraid children, fleeing refugees. Can you not see those faces? Do you not grasp that no tale excuses today's losses, lives and futures erased? Europe must address this. Europe must safeguard them. His words wavered at the end, dropping like unspoken sobs. No longer the icy strategist or fact-flinging accuser, he became someone aching to stir compassion. Silence enveloped the hall, the weight of his plea rare and raw. Prepare for the jaw-dropping turn as silence cracks open. Revealing if empathy or cunning will claim the summit, stay tuned, because this confrontation is far from over. Maria Zakharova rose calmly, a stark contrast to Keir Starmer's trembling voice. "Faces?" "Yes, sir." She whispered it, her words slicing through the heavy air like a blade through silk. "I see those faces too. The faces of children in Iraq, their wide eyes haunted by dust and echoing bombs. Women in Libya, their cries muffled by rubble and the acrid stench of gunpowder. Elders in Serbia, their wrinkled hands clutching memories of lost homes, fingers trembling against cold metal chairs. I still see them, even if you choose to erase them from your mind." She stepped toward the podium, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor, each step amplifying the tension in the room, where the scent of coffee mingled with sweat and the faint metallic bite of microphones. "Do you want to talk about suffering, sir? Let's do it honestly. Suffering doesn't wear a national flag. When you only weep for your own victims but bury the others in silence, it's not compassion, it's a weapon. And that makes your pleas hollow echoes in a vast, indifferent hall. But those echoes reverberate, filling the space with uncomfortable truths. Starmer clenched his fists, knuckles whitening as if gripping an invisible noose. You're comparing the incomparable, he snapped, his voice harsh, like a door slamming in a dimly lit corridor. Past mistakes can't excuse today's atrocities. Zakharova narrowed her eyes, her gaze sharp, piercing through the dim blue underglow of the walls. Past mistakes? You've never really admitted them, have you? Those errors aren't pages you can tear from history, they linger. Alive and festering in the shadows of your denials. And when you preach morality to others without cleansing your own conscience, your sermons turn into a mockery, a bitter farce that everyone hears but pretends not to. She lifted her eyes, her stare sweeping the chamber, engaging not just Starmer but the entire audience, their breaths held in collective unease. You claim Europe must protect people, splendid. But why then didn't Europe shield Greece from the chains of debt slavery? Why did it abandon millions of migrants rotting in icy camps, the wind howling through weak tents, carrying the stench of despair? Why doesn't it guard its own citizens from skyrocketing prices and crises it unleashed itself? Where's your solidarity when it truly matters? The room hummed with murmurs, a restless buzz like bees disturbed from their hive, as delegates shifted, feeling the sting in their own nation's wounds. Starmer attempted a pivot, his tone rising desperately, almost shrill. But Europe remains the world's beacon. A symbol of liberty, rights, and fairness. Zakharova smiled, not with mockery, but with weariness, like someone enduring a tiresome refrain. A beacon? She echoed, her voice steady, laced with quiet reproach. Forgive me, but didn't you extinguish your own light? A question that hung in the air, provocative and undeniable, igniting whispers of doubt. How could a so-called leader cloak hypocrisy in righteousness? How long before this facade crumbles, revealing the true cost of forgotten empires? The hall pulsed with anticipation, cameras whirring softly, capturing every flicker of Starmer's faltering confidence. Would he crumble completely, or twist free in a wildly unexpected reversal? The tension coiled tighter, promising revelations that could shatter alliances. In a historic verbal sparring match, Sir Keir Starmer, leader of the British opposition, stood poised as the tensions in the room reached a breaking point. Rising from his seat, his pale face and tightly pressed lips mirrored the exhaustion of a fighter on the ropes. He clutched his notes, trembling slightly, but soon discarded them, recognizing that written words would not save him now. Gentlemen, he began with a shaky firmness, let's not forget. Europe is not alone. Our allies stand with us, the United States, Canada, Japan, Australia. Together, we represent a civilized world united by shared values. He paused, glared at the audience, and continued, in stark contrast, Russia remains isolated and supported only by dictatorships. Isn't that proof you're straying from progress? His voice resonated with an accusatory fervor, punctuated by sharp assertions about international law. Russia violates borders. It disregards the decisions of international organizations. If we allow such behavior, we risk erasing the very meaning of international law. Europe must protect this order, or chaos will engulf us all. His words echoed like a thunderclap, an indictment filled with the energy of a prosecutor ready to bring the case to a close. For a moment, the audience seemed to awaken, caught in the urgency of his rhetoric. But then, like a carefully struck match against an icy surface, Maria Zakharova rose, her calm voice slicing through the air with precision. International laws, she repeated softly. A noble thought, but Mr. Starmer, who wrote these laws? Who established these rules? Isn't it the very states that have consistently broken them? She locked her gaze on the assembly. You speak of borders. Who dismantled the borders of Yugoslavia? You reference international organizations. Who ignored the United Nations Security Council when it initiated the war in Iraq? You argue about rights while wielding international law as a weapon of oppression. Starmer's brow furrowed, frustration evident, but she silenced him with her relentless questioning. Europe loves to judge, but tell me, how can one hold court when stained by crimes of their own? As the hall buzzed with whispered intrigues, it became apparent that the debate was far from over. Zakharova's tone carried a blend of authority and calm, exerting mastery over the dialogue like a seasoned maestro. With each point she raised, the pressure mounted on Starmer, making him acutely aware that the ground beneath his argument was yawning wide open. And now, as their duel escalated, the pivotal moment loomed, a confrontation that would reshape perceptions, but who would emerge victorious? The atmosphere thickened, the stakes heightened, and one question hung palpably in the air: could rhetoric truly mask reality? Would history judge this clash as a turning point, or merely another exchange in a series of entangled accusations? The outcome remained uncertain, cloaked in a veil of dramatic tension. Attention! Just 5 minutes ago in Europe, a stunning event unfolded. At a summit packed with dozens of world leaders, the unthinkable occurred. Keir Starmer, Britain's top opposition figure, aimed to challenge Russia directly. Yet, in that instant, Maria Zakharova seized the microphone and delivered words that silenced the room. News cameras scrambled to record it. Just what did Zakharova say to derail the summit and leave Starmer cornered? Stay tuned for the full tale. You'll be stunned. Continuing from Zakharova's sharp observations on Europe's fractures, debates over migrants, gas, debts, and internal divisions, she highlighted that the so-called unity is a facade. With a faint smirk, she scanned the delegates. Do you know what truly binds Europe together? She asked. Fear. The fear of losing power. Fear of dimming influence. Fear of a world no longer heeding their voices. Her words pounded the room like hammer blows on steel. Starmer's face drained of color. He clenched his fists, yet didn't rise again. Zakharova sat, calmly adjusting her hair, jotting a note in her pad. For her, this was routine duty, a steady chore, not a fiery clash. But for him, it signaled downfall. The audience sensed it. A humiliating shift had begun. What if a single phrase could shatter a man's unshakable ego in seconds? Imagine the chill of polished marble under sweaty palms, the faint metallic tang of tension in the air. Starmer paled further. Knuckles whitened. He squeezed his fists tighter, but refused to stand. Sweat beaded on his forehead, cold against the warm hum of buzzing cameras. Zakharova eased back into her seat. She smoothed her hair with deliberate grace, the silk strands slipping through her fingers like whispers. Then, she scribbled in her notebook, the scratch of pen on paper echoing softly. For her, this duel wasn't a battle, but everyday work, a calm execution of responsibility. For Starmer, it meant utter collapse. Who could have predicted this seasoned leader crumbling under relentless truths? The room felt the air thicken, charged with unspoken judgments. Journalists huddled closer, their pens pausing mid-flight. Diplomats shifted, fabrics rustling like fallen leaves. Whispers rippled, sharp and fleeting, as if secrets escaped. The British politician gripped slogans, but each one became a target. Zakharova countered with cold facts, each landing like a final verdict. Not just reporters, but envoys too sensed the tide turning. Power dynamics inverted in real time. The hall buzzed with weary energy, eyes glued to the stage where these two battled for hours, not diplomatic banter, but a raw existential showdown. Suddenly, Starmer rose heavily, as if lifting an invisible boulder. His voice lacked prosecutorial thunder or celebratory flair now. It raw, jittery, trembling at edges. Yet, in that quiver lay his desperate gamble. Abandon logic. Pivot to raw emotion. I beg you to consider the future, he appealed, gazing more at the crowd than his foe. Europe's tomorrow. Our children's fate. If Russia persists, if we accept might ruling right, what awaits us? What legacy for our kids? A world where liberty is mere ink on paper? Rights claimed by the armed? Do we want to hand such a realm to future generations? He paused. Soft gasps filled the air, a collective inhale. His plea resonated, if only briefly. Russia's path leads to ruin, he urged. Europe can't let past shadows engulf our continent anew. We must stand firm for tomorrow, honoring those who fought for freedom. How much deeper into humiliation could Starmer sink before a twist exposed his hollow crusade? The crowd's murmurs grew, a low drone mixing with the faint coffee scent and acrid stress of overheated lights. Chairs creaked under restless movements, air thick with anticipation. Her lace blouse brushed her skin, cool fabric against rising flush. Yet, a shocking twist loomed. Zakharova's final composure masked a strategic revelation, dismantling not just words, but illusions of authority. What hidden flaw in Europe's armor would she unveil next? Stay alert, the revelation comes now. Would you believe a twist so potent it reveals Europe's true fragility, hiding behind a mask of strength? In that charged room, where echoes of Starmer's pleas lingered like unanswered accusations, Zakharova drew a quiet breath. The faint perfume of nearby flowers, lilies, perhaps, contrasted the room's sterile chill. Her fingers traced the seat's velvet, soft yet unyielding, grounding her in the storm. Starmer's emotional appeal faltered, exposing cracks in his armor. But the director's twist hit harder. Zakharova hinted at Europe's darkest secret, a reliance on fear that birthed its policies, not noble ideals. Imagine the whisper of shock rippling through Rose, eyes widening as facades crumbled under her gaze. What if Europe's unity depended on colonial ghosts rather than shared values? She leaned in, voice steady, unveiling an unexpected shift. Europe's power thrived on exploiting fears, not fostering freedom. Camera's word, capturing jaws dropping. The scent of polished wood mingled with perspiration, a tangible unease. Can true progress emerge from such shadows? Her words probed, forcing reckonings. Visualize a room erupting in silent recoil, as facts burrow deeper than rhetoric. Starmer's sway waned, his trembling voice a stark contrast to earlier poise. Will this twist humble him further, or spark an unforeseen alliance? The air hummed with unresolved tension, each pause heavy. Could a buried truth redefine global debates forever? Her revelation forced the audience to confront Europe's foundations, built on fierce scaffolding. An unexpected fact surfaced: colonial echoes drove modern policies, twisting ideals into tools of control. The crowd stirred, whispers escalating. Who dares challenge the narrative when facts clash like swords? Starmer's posture slumped, defeat palpable in his wavering tone. What alliance might form next, or what betrayal? The hall's energy coiled, waiting for the cliff's edge. Russia must grasp its road leads to denial, he pressed. Europe shall not permit ancient gloom to reclaim our lands. We must marshal strength for what comes, in honor of liberty's champions. He lingered, allowing the silence to amplify. A trace of empathy flashed among spectators. Russia's course dooms it, he concluded. Our continent deserves clarity over darkness. Moments of silence filled the air as the tension between two political titans swelled. Here Starmer, standing firm, tried to convey the urgency of his message. He argued that Russia needed to recognize its flawed path, warning that Europe couldn't afford to let the darkness of history overshadow its future. In his gravelly voice, his passion echoed through the hall. The mothers crying in Syria weep just as deeply as those in France. Yet, you choose whose tears to acknowledge, he charged, his frustration palpable. Then, with a sudden hush, Maria Zakharova rose with deliberate grace. Each step she took seemed measured, as if time itself was bending to her will. She repeated his word, future. In her melodic tone, Zakharova challenged, Mr. Starmer, you speak of the future, yet you always regard Russia as the villain in your narrative. A thoughtful pause descended upon the assembly. Could the issue lie not in our actions, but in Europe's unwillingness to confront its own present? Her pointed gaze swept across the audience, sharp enough to silence any dissent. You claim Russia threatens the children of Europe. But let's be honest, who robbed the future from the children of Iraq? Who robbed the children of Libya? Was it Russia? She sharpened her tone, driving the blade deeper. No, sir. That was you and your allies. Starmer's facade of confidence cracked, sweat forming on his brow as he realized the weight of her words. Preserving her calm, Zakharova continued, you wish for the world to believe that only Russia bears the blame for its imperfections. But the truth is that the hypocrisy lies within those who profess freedom but snatch it away when it suits them. The audience was silent, each member hanging on her every syllable, pens pausing mid-note. We, too, think of the future, Mr. Starmer, she asserted, her voice swelling with authority. But a future cannot be built on lies, on double standards, or on fear that you feed the people of Europe toward Russia, Asia, or anyone who dares to be different. The intensity of her voice enveloped the hall, transforming her words into an undeniable force. Fear is no foundation, it breaks apart, revealing the truth you've long evaded. Starmer raised a tentative hand, poised to rebut, but Zakharova's icy gaze rooted him in place. You say you want to protect the children of Europe. But why not all children? She countered softly, her voice piercing through the thick atmosphere. Is a child in Africa less valuable than one in London? As the tension reached its peak, an audible gasp swept through the audience. How would Starmer respond to a question that challenged the core of his beliefs? Summary of the previous part. As Starmer attempted to raise his hand to respond, Zakharova's direct gaze made him freeze. She addressed his claim about protecting Europe's children, questioning why he didn't care for children around the globe, like those in Africa. Does a mother in Syria cry differently than one in France? You choose which tears to value and which to conveniently forget. This is why your words ring hollow. The room fell silent, a palpable tension settling in. Everyone awaited her next words. Russia isn't perfect, but we speak the truth, while you cower in fear. You fear your past, your present, and in blaming us, you blame yourselves. Her words hit like a gong, echoing throughout the hall. Starmer sat down, his face drained of color, his gaze vacant. He recognized the weight of his defeat, not just for his country, but as a politician caught unprepared. Zakharova, calm and poised, returned to her seat without celebration or gesture of triumph. She appeared to have spoken what was necessary, her authority unmistakable. Starmer sat, gripping his pen as though he could crush it. His attention flickered between the papers, the hall, and the cameras, but he found no steady ground. His breaths came in short gasps. Even those who might have felt sympathy understood, it was over. The moderator hesitantly suggested moving on to the next item on the agenda, but Zakharova raised her hand. Excuse me, she said, and the room hushed instantly. Let me finish. Standing tall, she carried neither fatigue nor grandiosity, only unwavering confidence. When she spoke, it was no longer focused on Starmer but resonated for all present. Today, we've heard much about values, rights, and threats. But let's be honest, these words have become mere tools of politics. You wield them as weapons, not principles. When Sir Starmer accuses Russia, he inadvertently accuses Europe of its own flaws. The audience held its breath, entranced by her insights. Russia serves as a convenient mirror for you. In it, you see the hypocrisy that hides behind your polished slogans. The atmosphere crackled with intensity, leaving everyone grappling with the truths unraveling before them. Zakharova's conviction shattered preconceptions, forcing the audience to confront deeper issues mysteriously masked by lofty rhetoric. What would Starmer do next in this game of political chess, where every move was critical? Would he retreat, or find a way to push back? The room buzzed silently with anticipation as eyes darted back to Starmer, him now the focus, a predator waiting to pounce. This wasn't merely a debate anymore, it had morphed into a struggle for narrative, a battle where words wielded the weight of nations. In just a few moments of fierce dialogue, everything could change. What twists lay ahead as the stakes escalated? How would the world perceive the silent yet powerful exchange unfolding in an arena meant for diplomacy, now overtaken by palpable tension and the unyielding pursuit of truth? In the aftermath of a gripping confrontation, the room buzzed with tension. Reporters hurriedly scribbled notes, exchanging glances, each processing the shock of what had just unfolded. They all sensed the air crackling with electricity, a shared understanding that tomorrow's headlines would erupt with the drama they had just witnessed. Yet, no words could fully encapsulate the weight of the moment, as a formidable woman in a pale suit deftly dismantled a towering wall of accusations, piece by piece. As she gathered her papers, the atmosphere shifted. Attendees felt they were part of something monumental, something destined to be etched in history. Keir Starmer remained seated, dwarfed beneath the high ceiling and ornate chandeliers, lost amid the sea of eyes watching him. Whispers danced through the corridors. Today, Europe heard not itself but Russia. Amid the profound silence, one thing became clear: this was not just another summit. It was a turning point, a confrontation that would resonate for years. Starmer's figure, once proud and confident, now seemed diminished. A moment of realization swept through the room: he wasn't just facing an opponent. He was up against a narrative that had shifted, leaving him grappling with a new reality. The moderator announced a break, yet no one stirred. They lingered, lost in thought, trying to capture the essence of what had happened. Each person knew they had witnessed a clash that transcended mere politics. It was a reflection of deeper truths about power, history, and identity. As she stepped out, not a smirk on her face but a quiet resolve in her step, the spectators felt an undeniable shift. They were no longer mere observers, they had witnessed a pivotal exchange, one that redefined roles on an international stage. In that instant, it was as if history itself had been rewritten, one where the voices of the past and present converged, compelling everyone to re-evaluate their perceptions. As Starmer continued to stare blankly ahead, realization dawned. This day would haunt him, a stark reminder of where he stood in the ever-changing landscape of global discourse. Questions lingered in the air: would he rise to the occasion or retreat into silence? Indeed, today was the moment Europe heard a voice it had long silenced. How would this reshape the very foundations they had stood upon? The uncertainty loomed large, begging deeper contemplation as those in the room began to process the magnitude of what they had experienced. The world outside may have been oblivious, but within these walls, a profound awakening had begun. Summary of previous part. In an intense exchange, Maria Zakharova confronted Keir Starmer about Britain's historical treatment of minors and its actions in Northern Ireland. Starmer, visibly uneasy, preferred not to revisit these dark chapters, but Zakharova pressed on, exploring deeper issues of national identity and responsibility. The story: every time you warn about Russia threatening Europe, I must ask, who has been expanding military alliances closer to our borders for decades? Zakharova's voice was steady, each word punctuated like a firm coin pressed into hand. The room thickened with tension. Who's been placing missiles nearer to Moscow? Isn't that a threat? Or is a threat only what doesn't align with London's interests? Starmer shifted uncomfortably, attempting to redirect the discussion. Let's discuss economics, he said, revitalized. Russia is lagging behind. Your GDP is less than Italy's. Your industry is in decline. What's the point of boasting about achievements if your country can't compete globally? Her smile widened, as though she had been waiting for this moment. Ah, economy, she mused, relishing in her favorite topic. You gauge a country's strength by numbers on paper. We measure it by human capital. Her tone dripped with irony. In Russia, every child can attend university debt-free. Meanwhile, your students are shackled to loans for decades. You call that competitiveness? She continued, her voice smooth yet cutting. How about addressing the mounting debt your nation carries? A debt that grows faster than many countries you deem inferior. Perhaps instead of lecturing others, you should first review your own accounts. Starmer clenched his fists, a telltale sign captured by cameras, only to relax them moments later, too late to mask the ripples of discomfort growing in the audience. He tried to regain control, exclaiming, "But your people are fleeing the country. They leave because they see no future. Isn't that a clear sign of your system's failure?" Zakharova regarded him with renewed seriousness. People leave, she echoed. But look at your own statistics. How many Britons have emigrated in the last 20 years? How many have settled in Australia, Canada, or New Zealand? The room held its breath as her words lingered, echoing starkly against the backdrop of their heated battle. What might happen next? Would Starmer find a counter that could turn the tide, or was he outmatched in this thrilling game of wits and history? In an instant that froze the hall like a sudden hailstorm, Starmer's defiant cry about freedom of speech echoed, only to break against Zakharova's ironclad rebuttal. Her words cut deep, exposing cracks in his armor, leaving him groping for solid ground. Journalists whispered in awe, sensing the tide had turned irreversibly. Is this your true measure of freedom? The question hung in the air, sharp as shattered glass. In that breathless pause, the entire assembly exhaled a collective sigh, as if releasing pent-up tension from their chests. Even the translators faltered for a split second, mice clicking softly in their earpieces. They knew, deep down, Starmer had no escape this time. He opened his mouth to retort, but his words jammed like rusty gears. He stumbled mid-sentence, voice trailing off into a hollow silence. Pretending to riffle through papers, his hands trembled faintly on the podium's cold surface. The defeat hung over him, palpable and stinging, like the acrid scent of defeat mingling with the faint metallic tang of microphones. Zakharova leaned back in her chair, the fabric whispering against her skin. She calmly adjusted a stray lock of hair, her movements deliberate and composed. No triumphant gestures, no booming declarations. Her power radiated from sheer poise, a quiet storm that unnerved without a shout. In that frozen second, whispers rippled through the crowd. Had the battle ended already? He had pummeled her with volume, accusations laced with pulpit fervor. Yet each thrust met a wall, a historical nugget, a pointed anecdote, a wry barb that deflected the blow. Bit by bit, his oratory dissolved into frantic rambling, a house of cards collapsing in a whisper. One journalist leaned toward a colleague, breath low and urgent. The hall's hum underscored his words. He really wished he hadn't sparked this firefight. The colleague stifled a smirk, teeth clenching to hold back the grin. Her facts sliced like a surgeon's blade, clean, no blood, but agony all the same. The summit dragged on, but the real drama had unfolded. Reports, debates, statements, all mere shadows now, eclipsed by this verbal clash where the British leader stood disarmed and exposed. Zakharova gazed ahead, face serene, eyes gleaming with the fire of unyielding truth. Even harsh realities resound louder than empty chants, don't they? What shadow will fall next as tensions simmer beneath the surface? After the short interval, the summit resumed, the air still thick with unspoken shock. Starmer hovered off to one side, clutching a glass of water. His fingers betrayed him, quivering like leaves in a gale, rippling the liquid surface in tiny, anxious waves, a mirror of his inner turmoil. He sipped, but the dryness lingered in his throat, rough and unyielding, as if chasing ghosts through barren corridors. In stark contrast, Zakharova carried on effortlessly. She murmured with the translator, her laughter light and musical, like wind chimes in a breeze. Exchanging amiable nods with neighbors, her expression was flawless calm, unmarred by furrows or frowns. The contrast sharpened, Starmer fidgeted endlessly, yanking at his tie, a loop that cinched tighter than before, his eyes darting around the room, pleading for a glimmer of backup from the silent allies. They watched like spectators at a chess match, unwilling to intervene, letting him absorb the full brunt alone. The unspoken message lingered, allegiance evaporates when the crown slips. Would his final retort redefine the chaos, or seal his humiliation forever? The pause stretched, electric and foreboding, as eyes locked in the charged space. What untold revelation waits to shatter this fragile truce? Imagine the tremble of anticipation, the distant murmur of translators, the cool draft carrying secrets through the room. A single word could upend it all, and in this breathless lull, the stakes rose impossibly higher. Yes, the duel raged on, beneath the surface, unresolved and simmering. Who would strike next in this hall of mirrors, where every glance concealed a dagger? As Starmer's facade cracked further, a shocking pivot loomed. Could forgotten alliances finally force a deadly concession? The air hummed with destiny, waited and waiting. What if the real bombshell wasn't spoken yet, but felt in every heartbeat? As the debate raged, Sir Starmer's confidence began to crumble. He had accused Russia of undermining global order, but Maria Zakharova turned the tables, exposing Europe's hidden flaws. The room fell silent, sensing the hypocrisy in Britain's so-called moral supremacy. It felt like a spotlight had shifted, showing wounds long buried under polished speeches. Imagine being cornered in a room full of eyes, where every breath echoes like a whispered secret. Could Europe's leaders really claim innocence, or were they masking their own shadows behind lofty ideals? Zakharova leaned in, her voice slicing through the air like a cool breeze carrying the scent of aged parchment and fresh ink. You see the fear you pass off as strength, the dependency on foreign wills that you call alliances. And you label it as an external threat, to avoid admitting the danger lies within yourselves. She paused, her gaze steady, pressing into him like a firm hand on a trembling shoulder. Do you fear admitting Europe's weariness as a teacher? That the world no longer heeds your lessons? You dread recognizing how your colonies and students now speak as equals. And this terror, you project onto Russia. Suddenly, a twist unfolded, like a veil dropping to reveal a canvas painted in stark truths. No one expected Zakharova to unveil how European unity was forged not in harmony, but through secretive pacts laden with unspoken debts. Sir Starmer lifted his head, words stuttering on his lips, fumbling with notes that crumpled under stress. Zakharova pressed on relentlessly. Russia doesn't aim to humiliate you, nor deprive you of a future. We only demand you stop claiming sole ownership of truth. Because truth belongs not to London, Brussels, or Washington. It belongs to the world entire. Her tone softened, yet its weight deepened, each syllable landing with the thud of a courtroom gavel. A hush enveloped the hall, punctuated by the soft rustle of papers and the faint hum of overhead lights. If Europe truly seeks a path for its children, it must abandon its dread of reality. Her final words resonated like distant thunder fading into stillness. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, then a single clap broke it, hesitant at first. It swelled into applause, measured not in frenzy, but in grudging respect for raw honesty. Not thunderous cheers, but acknowledgement of a courage many had muted. Starmer sat frozen, his face unyielding, yet his eyes betrayed the sting of defeat. This day would mark him, an emblem of failure etched in memory. Zakharova returned to her seat calmly, no grin of triumph, no boast to the crowd. She exuded not pride, but serene resolve, the kind that commands without screams. The moderator called for a break. Yet no one stirred, held captive by the intensity. Whispers lingered in the air, thick with tension and revelation. But as bodies finally shifted, rumor spread of more shocks to come. Would Zakharova's words ignite change, or just bury deeper divides? The tension in the room reached a boiling point as a powerful exchange unfolded between two political figures. Keir Starmer, representing Britain's opposition, had just delivered a fiery speech, condemning Russia. But Maria Zakharova, the face of Russian diplomacy, was not about to let him dominate the discourse. As Starmer's arguments faltered, a pivotal moment arrived when he shouted, "But you have no freedom of speech." Zakharova leaned forward slightly, her eyes sharp and steady. "Freedom of speech," she echoed. "What about Julian Assange, the man who revealed truths but remains imprisoned?" At that moment, the entire room seemed to inhale sharply. Even the translators paused momentarily, realizing Starmer might struggle to retort. He stumbled over his words, grappling for composure as silence enveloped him like a shroud. His defeat became evident in that brief stillness. Meanwhile, Zakharova reclined in her chair, adjusting her hair with a calm demeanor that exuded confidence. She did not raise her hands in triumph nor shout loud declarations, her strength lay in her composure. It became clear to many present, the debate had reached its conclusion. Starmer had tried loud accusations and theatrics, but each time, Zakharova countered with historical facts and sharp remarks, rendering his arguments to mere incoherent mutterings. As whispers spread among the journalists, "Looks like he underestimated the debate," one remarked, while another stifled a grin. Everyone knew this showdown was the summit's main event, overshadowing the other discussions. Zakharova's gaze remained fixed ahead. Her calm face betraying no signs of stress, yet her eyes sparkled with the knowledge that even uncomfortable truths would resonate louder than any rhetoric. After a brief recess, the conference resumed, but the air remained heavy with unease. Starmer sat to the side, nervously clutching a glass of water. His fingers trembled, causing the liquid to ripple, mirroring his inner turmoil. He took a sip, but it did little to soothe the dryness in his throat, reminiscent of a long race. In stark contrast, Zakharova appeared unperturbed, engaging effortlessly with her translator and smiling casually. The lack of tension on her face stood in stark opposition to Starmer's fidgety adjustments of his tie, desperately scanning the audience for a hint of support. The tension in the room was palpable as the debate reached its peak. Maria Zakharova appeared calm, exchanging whispers with her translator, a smile gracing her lips, unfettered by the weight of the discussion. In stark contrast, Keir Starmer fidgeted nervously, adjusting his tie and scanning the audience for a hint of support, a lifeline in hostile waters. As the moderator announced a return to the pressing issue of European security, Starmer seized the moment with an intensity that filled the air. This was no time for gilded words, he had come to reclaim his narrative. Europe cannot turn a blind eye to threats, he declared. Russia, our neighbor, has become a source of instability, a destabilizing force. We must unite against its attempts to undermine the international order. Each word cut through the silence like a knife, charged with a determination to reassert his authority. But as soon as he paused to catch his breath, Zakharova's voice rose again, smooth yet piercing. "Forgive me, Mr. Starmer," she began, her tone sharpening, "but you use the term threat so liberally, it loses all meaning. What do you consider a danger? Is it Russia safeguarding its borders? Preserving its culture and language? Or perhaps it's the audacity we have to disagree with your narrative?" Her raised eyebrow was a challenge, an invitation to reflect. "Is it that we still afford our citizens free education and healthcare, ensuring that social goods are not commodities for the privileged?" Starmer's audibility broke with a heavy exhale, his resolve nearly palpable as he prepared for the verbal battle. "You claim to protect the people, yet your citizens lack the right to change their government peacefully. That, Mr. Starmer, is a true threat," she countered, tilting her head ever so slightly, her hair brushing against her shoulder, giving her the appearance of a guardian listening intently to a child's muddled explanation. "And you speak of peaceful measures," she continued, her voice soft but firm. "Let's not forget your own history. How did Britain treat minors in the 80s? Was it a peaceful resolution? Or your actions in Northern Ireland, where for decades conflict raged?" The room fell silent, the gravity of her words sinking in as Starmer's face paled, the uncomfortable truth catching him off guard. Those were chapters from Britain's past he preferred to leave unturned, but Zakharova was relentless, exposing the cracks in his argument. The crowd was spellbound, caught between two fierce narrators competing for the soul of a continent. Would Starmer regain his footing, or would Zakharova's relentless inquiries send him tumbling further down the rabbit hole of history? The answer lingered in the air, thick with anticipation and the scent of confrontation. Imagine this, just 5 minutes ago, Europe was rocked by a stunning revelation. At a high-stakes summit packed with dozens of world leaders, no one saw it coming. Keir Starmer, Britain's fiery opposition leader, stood tall, aiming to humiliate Russia with his stern words. But then, Maria Zakharova grabbed the microphone, her soft voice cutting through the air like a sharp blade, leaving the room in stunned silence. Journalists scrambled, lenses flashing wildly, hearts pounding in disbelief. What explosive words did she unleash, flipping the script and exposing Starmer as the vulnerable underdog? Stick around, because this confrontation will leave you breathless, questioning everything. In the prior clash, Starmer painted Russia as a crumbling empire forcing its people to flee in despair. But Zakharova struck back fiercely, challenging him to examine his own nation's exodus. How many Britons had bolted to far-flung shores like Australia, Canada, and New Zealand in the last 2 decades? Was this simple choice or sheer desperation? The polished wood of the table felt cool under Zakharova's fingertips as she leaned forward, her gaze piercing through the haze of tension. She paused, letting the weight of her next words hang like mist in the room. Is this flight for freedom, or is it the silent cry of lost hopes? A faint rattle of papers from anxious aides echoed in the stillness, the acrid scent of overheated projectors mingling with sweat-damp notes of exhaustion. She waited a heartbeat, then added softly, "People move, yes. They come and go. But a true nation is judged not by wanderers at its borders, but by the lives it builds right here, right now. Russia, amidst all its storms, still stands as a shield. Hospitals open their doors wide to every soul in need, no questions asked. Schools beckon every child like welcoming arms and a warm embrace. Can your Britain brag the same without caveats or hidden costs, Mr. Starmer?" The chill of air conditioning brushed her skin, amplifying the thud of pounding hearts around them. He parted his lips, seeking refuge in excuses, but nothing emerged. Deep down, he admitted the truth. Britain's revered National Health Service creaks under epic strains, waiting lines stretching endlessly, doctors' voices drowned in fatigue. Even the staunchest patriots whisper of cracks in the foundation. Zakharova eased back, her sigh carrying the faint perfume of nerves and resolve. "You label us a peril," she murmured, voice like velvet over steel, "but perhaps we're just your reflection. Every accusation you hurl? It echoes your deepest fear staring back." Her words reverberated through the chamber, a deep, resonant toll that silenced even the soft hum of cameras. Starmer's face tightened, his eyes flashing fury, yet he stayed mute. He grasped that further retorts would only sink him deeper into the mire. Zakharova's smile bloomed serene, a quiet triumph. Victory isn't in shouts, she thought, but in truth whispered at the perfect instant. The post-break stretch dragged on like a slow, suffocating fog. Starmer sat rigid, eyes locked on the folder brimming with scripted speeches and rehearsed cues. The crisp paper felt flimsy now, no match for Zakharova's torrent of facts. Yet. Surrender meant tomorrow's headlines skewering him back home in London. He couldn't let himself become the butt of ridicule. His posture sharpened, movements jittery, voice rising to mask the cracks. He lunged at the podium, fear's bitter tang on his tongue. Europe, he declared, lifting a hand as if to ward off doom, faces a dire menace. Was this the twilight of his defenses, or a desperate lunge into the unknown? Could Zakharova's mirror shatter his empire, revealing the fraud beneath the facade? Stay tuned, as the drama turns uglier, secrets exploding like landmines in the heart of power. As the tension mounted in the Brussels summit hall, Keir Starmer lashed out at Russia, dismissing its government as isolated and supported only by dictatorships. He invoked Europe's allies like the United States, Canada, Japan, and Australia as beacons of shared values. But Maria Zakharova's smile shifted from tired indifference to sharp focus, ready to counter with facts that exposed Europe's hidden cracks. "Oh, that beacon of yours?" Zakharova's voice cut through like a sudden gust of wind, carrying the faint metallic tang of stressed microphones. "Is this the same light that flickers on and off based on what's profitable for your budgets? The one that guides some while blinding others in its glare? Does that sound like true fairness? What shocking hypocrisy has Zakharova unearthed about Europe's civilized allies, and how does it leave Starmer scrambling for cover?" Imagine the room's air growing thick with unspoken secrets, the soft shuffle of notes and the creak of chairs as diplomats adjust uncomfortably under the weight of a truth they can't deny. As Zakharova straightened, her tone turned solemn, echoing off the softly lit walls like a solemn oath. "Real justice means judging your own actions and others equally. It means valuing every person's pain, not twisting values into tools for pressure." Starmer stood frozen, words caught in his throat, a single wrong syllable might invite another barrage. Zakharova leaned into her words, philosophical and piercing. "Europe dreads facing its own truths. You plaster over fractures with facades, chant pretty slogans to drown out your citizens' cries. And you label as threats those daring to mirror reality back at you. But reality clings stubbornly, and the harder you shove it away, the harsher the crash when it hits." The hall fell eerily quiet, translation headsets barely humming, as if the very air held its breath, heavy with the scent of brewing coffee and sweat-dampened nerves. Did you know Europe's cherished image hides a web of double standards that Zakharova is unraveling thread by thread? What's the ultimate twist that could shatter this summit, and Starmer's defenses, forever? Starmer slumped back into his chair, shoulders sagging under the invisible burden of Zakharova's unearthed history. Her words pressed like a cold hand on his back. She jotted notes calmly, sipped water with a crick in her glass, then reclined, her expression an unbreakable mask amid the storm. Now everyone saw this wasn't just diplomatic sparring, it was a clash of ideologies, and Starmer was sinking fast. Clocks ticked past late evening. Typically, the room would empty by now, delegates slipping out for calls and receptions. Yet no one stirred. They knew this verbal duel had etched its mark on history, its closing notes poised to judge. Starmer rose again, pale-faced, lips a tight line, trembling papers abandoned as futile. He reeked of defeat, his crisp suit now wrinkled from the strain. But Zakharova's calm poise dominated the space, hinting at more revelations lurking. Could one final revelation about Europe's colonial shadows hold the key to Zakharova's victory, or will Starmer find an unexpected ally in the shadows of the past? The hall echoes with anticipation. Each breath a reminder that some truths sting deeper than facts. You see fear masquerading as strength. You witness reliance on others' wills, labeled as alliances. And you call it an external threat to avoid admitting, the real danger lurks within you. Can a continent built on domination truly claim moral high ground without confronting its own shadows? She paused, her gaze steady yet piercing like a blade cutting through mist. The air grew heavier, carrying the faint tang of polished wood and nervous sweat. You dread admitting Europe tires of its teacher's role, that the world no longer hangs on your every word. You fear acknowledging colonies and pupils now speak as equals. And this terror you project onto Russia. But here's the shocking twist, Russia doesn't aim to demean or rob you of tomorrow. We simply demand you cease hoarding truth like a relic. Truth isn't owned by London, Brussels, or Washington. It belongs to the world. Her voice softened, yet gained weight, vibrating through the room. If Europe seeks a future for its young, it must stop fleeing reality. These words hit the hall like a final crescendo, shattering silence. Yet, hearts pounded, papers rustled softly. A hush reigned a few seconds, then solitary claps echoed. Fingers met palms, building to thunderous applause. Not wild cheers or blind zeal, just admiration for unyielding arguments and bravery to voice unspoken thoughts. Stammer stood frozen, his face a mask, but eyes betrayed defeat like cracks in armor. He sensed this moment branded him with failure, a scar never forgotten. Zakharova sat calmly, no smile, no bow, no basking in ovation. She appeared as if fulfilling a duty. In her eyes gleamed not pride, but serenity, a force that hushed critics. The moderator called a break, but stillness gripped the room. Minds reeled from the drama. Questions swirled unspoken. Had the old order just crumbled here? Were allies recoiling from their own reflections? And then, the unthinkable reveal ripped through. Zakharova's words weren't isolated fury, they echoed classified Eurodocs exposing skepticisms of their own policies. Would this spark rebellion against self-deception? What if Europe's beacon dimmed further, forcing humiliation unimaginable? In this gripping encounter that unfolded just moments ago, the atmosphere buzzed with intensity as two formidable figures faced off. Keir Starmer, Britain's charismatic opposition leader, had aimed to discredit Russia, but Maria Zakharova, the spokesperson for the foreign ministry, was poised to turn the tables on him. The world watched closely, breathless with anticipation. As tension spiked, Zakharova spoke with precision that sliced through the air, targeting Starmer's past. Every warning you issue about Russia threatening Europe makes me ponder, she began, steady and unwavering. Who has encroached on our borders with military alliances for years? Is it not your actions that have encapsulated us within such an ominous shadow? Each syllable was deliberate, the impact palpable. The audience felt the shift, a reverberation of uncertainty fluttering amidst the gathered diplomats and journalists. Starmer flinched under the weight of the inquiry, trying to steer the conversation toward economics. Let's talk about numbers, Maria, he asserted, regaining composure. Your nation's GDP struggles to match Italy's. Your industries are faltering. What's the value in boasting about achievements if your country can't hold its ground in the global arena? Yet, Zakharova's smile broadened, as if she relished this moment. Ah, the economy, she mused, her tone laced with condescension. You measure power in dry figures, while we value our human capital. In Russia, education is free for every child. Meanwhile, British students graduate with mountains of debt, bound like shackles. How do you consider that a competitive edge? The audience leaned in, captivated by her cutting remarks that struck with the sharpness of reality. Starmer grew visibly agitated, fists clenched in a battle with discomfort, only to release them as he attempted to regain his footing. But your citizens are fleeing. They see no hope in your system. Isn't that the ultimate failure of your governance? The crowd simmered, waiting for Zakharova's counter. People flee, she replied, her expression defiant. But how many British citizens have sought new lives abroad? How many have left to start anew in Australia or Canada? As her words hung heavily in the air, a sense of hushed anticipation enveloped the room. Starmer seemed cornered, grasping for a response that would resonate, yet each attempt fell flat against Zakharova's incisive critiques. Would he find a way to reclaim his authority, or was he destined to falter in this groundbreaking duel of ideologies and histories? The outcome remained uncertain, a cliffhanger that drew the audience deeper into the unfolding drama. The air thickened with anticipation as the debate reached a fever pitch. Maria Zakharova was calm, casually exchanging remarks with her translator, a subtle smile dancing on her lips. This tranquility clashed sharply with Keir Starmer, who fidgeted nervously, constantly adjusting his tie and casting glances across the audience, desperately seeking a nod of support amid the prevailing tension. As the moderator pivoted back to the urgent discussion of European security, Starmer sensed his moment. With a voice brimming with desperation and authority, he proclaimed, Europe must not ignore the looming threats. Our neighbor, Russia, is no longer just a neighbor, It has evolved into a source of insecurity and instability. We must join forces to thwart its efforts to disrupt our international framework. Each phrase vibrated through the room, reverberating with urgency, as he aimed to reclaim control of the narrative. But the moment he paused, Zakharova's voice sliced through the silence, smooth yet incisive. "Excuse me, Mr. Starmer," she interjected, her words sharp as a blade, "but your usage of the word threat is so frequent that it begins to lose its weight. What constitutes a danger, exactly? Is it Russia taking steps to defend its borders? Or perhaps it is the preservation of its culture and language that unsettles you? Or is it simply our willingness to challenge your narrative?" Her arched eyebrow posed a question, inviting contemplation. "And what of our commitment to free education and healthcare? Isn't that, too, a measure of social responsibility? Ensuring necessities are not merely privileges?" Starmer's conviction wavered, his breath heavier as he prepared for this clash of ideologies. "You assert that you champion the populace," she pressed, shifting slightly, her demeanor that of a wise mentor. "Yet, your citizens are denied the fundamental right to peacefully change their government. Now, that, Mr. Starmer, poses a genuine threat," she asserted, her tone unwavering. "And you speak of peaceful solutions," she added, her voice laden with irony. "How did Britain handle the miners during the 1980s? Was that a moment of tranquility? What about your actions in Northern Ireland, where decades of turmoil persisted?" Her words hung heavily in the atmosphere, forcing Starmer to confront uncomfortable truths from Britain's past that he likely wished to avoid. His complexion paled, realization washing over him as the weight of her inquiries pressed down. From the audience, a murmur spread as listeners absorbed the unfolding drama. They were captivated, caught in the crossfire of these two powerful voices vying for dominance over their shared narrative. Would Starmer manage to reclaim his footing amidst the barrage, or would Zakharova's incisive line of questioning push him into deeper historical depths? The outcome lingered in the charged atmosphere, thick with the scent of confrontation and the promise of revelation. Just moments ago, Europe felt the shockwaves ripple through a grand summit, teeming with world leaders. In an unexpected twist, Keir Starmer, Britain's resolute opposition leader, took to the stage to challenge Russia. However, the atmosphere shifted dramatically as Maria Zakharova, poised and confident, seized the microphone. Her voice sliced through the tension, leaving the audience in stunned silence, as cameras clicked frantically, trying to capture this pivotal moment. What had she unleashed that could turn the tables and cast doubt on Starmer's rhetoric? Allow yourself to be drawn into this encounter, where every word is a potential game-changer. Previously, Starmer had painted a bleak picture of Russia, depicting it as an empire riddled with discontent that forced its citizens to flee. But Zakharova quickly countered, commanding the room's attention with a question that pierced through Starmer's carefully crafted narrative. How many Britons have left for distant lands such as Australia, Canada, or New Zealand? Her tone was both provocative and defiant, igniting whispers among the gathered journalists. The air was thick with anticipation. She leaned closer, her fingers grazing the cool, polished surface of the podium. Is this an exodus driven by ambition or desperation? In the silence that followed, paper rustled and tension soared, mingling with the musty scent of worn-out reports. People depart, true, she continued, her voice carrying a weighty calm. But a nation's worth is measured not by those who leave, but by the community it nurtures here and now. Look around, hospitals stand open for all, schools embrace every child. Does Britain offer the same without strings attached, Mr. Starmer? The piercing chill of the air conditioning seemed to amplify the heartbeats echoing in the chamber. Starmer found himself grappling for a response, knowing full well the struggles of the British healthcare system echoed with its own fractures and turmoil. Zakharova adjusted her posture, exuding both confidence and grace. You warn us of danger, she said, her voice a melodic juxtaposition of softness and strength, yet could it be that we are merely a reflection of what you fear? The room fell utterly silent, the weight of her words settling in like a fog. Starmer's expression darkened, rage flickering in his eyes, but he remained tight-lipped, aware that any further remarks could worsen his position. Zakharova's serene smile suggested a quiet victory, truth held more power than fury. As the session resumed, tension thickened the air like a palpable force. Starmer sat, hands gripping the edges of his folder, each page crammed with lines he had rehearsed countless times. But none of it felt substantial in the midst of Zakharova's relentless factual onslaught. Surrender wasn't an option, facing a barrage of headlines mocking his performance loomed dreadfully close. Steeling himself, he rose once more, his pulse quickening. Europe stands on the brink of peril, he declared, his voice trembling at the edges, as if fighting against an unseen wave of impending doom. Where would the truth lead him now? Zakharova's unyielding stance threatened to unearth the very foundation of his claims, exposing the vulnerabilities lurking beneath his polished exterior. As the stakes escalated, so too did the undercurrents of this dramatic showdown, with secrets waiting to erupt, turning this diplomatic dance into a true battleground for ideals and identity. Keep watching as the narrative twists further and deeper, each moment charged with the intensity of buried history beginning to surface.